Hi guys, it's Mrs. Hopkins and my puppy Tux. Get ready for another draw along. Today we're going to do something a little different though. You need a pencil and 2 markers, blue and yellow. If you don't have markers, you can use a crayon. All right, grab your things and meet you back in just a second. All right, so here's our apple that we're going to be drawing. A very simple apple. We're going to make it about the size of our hand, including the leaf. Should be about the size of a softball, okay? So we're gonna go and get started. I don't want you to draw it like a circle because an apple is actually not really shaped like a circle. It dents in and it dents out. So we're gonna come down about 3 or 4 fingers width from the top of our paper. And I just want you to start with a little slightly curved line, like a little smile line. I'm using a pencil today for this. And then we're going to go to the left. So I'm just going to curve out. And as I come down, I'm going to angle in slightly so that it's narrower at the bottom and a little wider at the top. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Remember to sketch lightly. This isn't a drawing that I want you to put your pencil down and just draw the whole thing like a contour line. I want you to use that very, very light touch. Remember, when you're sketching, you want to draw so light that you can erase it and never be able to tell that it was there. I really want you to get in the habit of trying to draw very light. Okay, so now we're going to add a stem. So for the stem, our stem is going to be smaller at the bottom and a little wider at the top. I'm going to finish it with an oval. Then we're going to make a little stem off of that. And a leaf. Make that nice big leaf. Curved line. If you would like to add a little shadow under your apple to make it even more realistic, you can do so just by creating a little shadow. If the light was coming this way, the shadow would go to the right. Okay? All right, so now we're going to talk about pointillism a little bit. This is where we're going to pause and I'm going to show you a couple pictures of some famous pointillism artwork. One is by an artist named Seurat, and he's a famous artist that used pointillism for all of his artwork. Pointillism is the use of dots to fill something in, and you can use 2 colored or 3 colored dots, and when you place them side by side, they will actually appear to be a different color. For example, if you pick 2 primary colors and you place them side by side and you do enough of them from a distance, it will look like those 2 primary colors secondary color. So by using yellow and blue dots, we're going to be able to make our apple look green. All right, so take a look at these great works and I'll see you back in a second. All right, we're back. So what's really cool about those paintings by Seurat is that he didn't actually use any orange or any green, which you see a lot of in those paintings. He actually used little dots to make green of yellow and blue put side by side. And for the orange, he used little dots of yellow and red side by side to make it look like it's orange when the viewer stands back from it. Those paintings were giant, and he spent a very long time making all those dots. So that's one reason why I picked something small, so as not to overwhelm you. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with our blue and our yellow to make our green apple. And you have to be very careful when you're doing this, because as you get a little tired, you can get a little sloppy with it and start kind of banging your marker down. We don't want that. I want you to use the very tip of your marker. You're going to turn it up on its toes, straight up and down, and you're going to just gently press. Now, a lot of times people will want to work all over the apple. Do not do that. Start on one side and work in small areas. This might be a drawing that you might not do in one setting. You might have to work on this a couple of times. All right. okay? And for a beginner, if you find this too complicated, you can just go ahead and color your apple. But maybe for some students who are wanting to do something a little more advanced, or even for some of you moms and dads out there, this might be something you want to work on for a day or two to really make those dots nice, okay? So we're gonna start with our two colors. Also, don't try to use two at the same time. Sometimes you guys like to try to do that. Let's just do one at a time. Now, when you have a dark color and a light color, you're gonna need a whole lot of the light color to help balance out the dark color. So you're gonna really need a lot of yellow as we get going to make this really look like green whenever we're done, okay? All right, so I'm gonna start with my blue, and I wanna work fairly close together. I don't wanna spread my dots out really far. Since I'm right-handed, I'm gonna start on the left side and I'm gonna work to the right. And I'm just gonna press and make those nice little dots. And you wanna kind of try to go in between where you haven't been. For some of my younger learners, like I said, you could just color your apple in if you'd like to. All right, so now I'm working that blue, getting lots of little blue dots in there. All right, now I'm gonna go in between those with my yellow marker. And you can already see what's starting to happen as I'm kind of touching the yellow close to the blue. So pointillism is something that I would do with probably grades 3 and up. But there are definitely some younger kiddos who would be very capable of doing this as well. All right, we're starting to get the effect now. So as you're doing this, look to your areas, and if you see an area that looks predominantly blue still or yellow, then you know you need to go in with the other color and add some more. So it really has to be pretty compact. All right, this is the point in the video where we're gonna fast forward, and I will see you in just a second for my finished apple. My apple done, there's a couple other things you can do. One thing you can do is take your darkest color here, which would be our blue, and if you want to create some shading now or some depth, you can actually take your darker color and apply it around the edges. Like I could go down that line to just darken that up, and I could do that all the way around. Just really compacting them close together to kind of crispen the edges. If you're finding that your apple's too fuzzy and you want it a little crisper where we can see it, the other thing you can do is not only outline it, but you can kind of do a fade to where you're applying more of the blue on the edge and then less and less of it as you go towards the middle on both sides to create that depth and make it look rounded, because rounded objects are darker on the outside and that light source hits the center. again, these are steps that you could take to make this into a more advanced lesson. I know some of you were asking for things that were a little more advanced or for older students. So this is a lesson that could be kept simple with the apple drawing, or you could do the advanced steps as well. So basically what we're doing is we're using shading. Instead of shading, we're using pointillism or stippling, where we're using little dots to create value. Value being light and dark areas to create dimension. All right, you can already start to see that going in there. I'll do the other side. I'm gonna really put those close together. And this is something that when you get fatigued, you should go away from and come back, because as your hand gets tired, you'll start to get those little dashes and little lines instead of nice little dots. The best way to learn is to kind of experiment, because you'll find that the way that one person does it isn't maybe the way another person applies it. Everybody's got their own way that they like to use materials. So I'm just sharing with you some practices that might kind of get you going and get you engaged with what works good for you and how you like to apply things. Kind of using some basic value concepts here to start creating some depth. All right, so now we've got a little more depth on the outside. We could blend that out a little bit more by applying a little more blue, but not as much, and then gradually less and less as we go towards the middle. Or if you want that heavier on the outside, you can leave it like that. Now for your, and you can see I'm getting a little smudgy, so that's another thing you want to watch. You might want to stop and wash your hand in between as well, so that you're not dragging across your paper. And that's what happens when your hand gets fatigued. Your hand starts to drag down, so you really want to keep space in between your hand and the paper. As you finish this, you could go ahead and finish it with pointillism. You could use a brown and a green, or you could just use a colored pencil or regular marker and just use brown and green. It's up to you. Now I will show you how to do the brown, because for the brown we're going to use all three of the primary colors, because we know when we mix red, yellow, and blue together it does make brown. Now again, you're going to have to go lighter handed with the darker colors and pretty heavy handed with your yellow to get that nice balance, just because yellow is a lighter color and it's less intense. So you are going to have to apply more of it to balance those other two colors out. I'm just going to apply. And it takes a little bit when you're trying to really make something like brown. You really have to stay at it. Maybe go back and add more of a particular color. Oh, we're starting to get that. And it won't be perfect. It also kind of depends on your markers. Sometimes our markers aren't true colors either. So if your brown is looking too green, then you know you need to add the other primary color, which would be red. If it's looking too purple, then you know you need more yellow. And then we're going to do the top there. Make it really compact. And I can do the same thing for the leaf, or if I want to come in and maybe add a colored pencil, for example. And I might, on my colored pencil, just come in just do simple. There's so many techniques for colored pencil that you can get into, but we're just going to keep it simple for this, and I'm just going to add a nice little layer of green, and then I think I'll come in with some brown to just give it a little bit of value. So I'm going to just take the brown, and I'm just going to kind of shade over my edges, my stem. And then if you want to blend that brown out, making it get lighter and lighter as it goes towards the center. This is something my 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders know how to do. You want to avoid a harsh line around the edge. You want to kind of crispen it, not make it too hard at the same time. Same thing down here on the shadow. We could use our 3 colors if we want to. Make a brown shadow. And a lot of times I'll go a little light when I'm doing a 3 color blend like brown, because you want to make sure that you do have some room to go back and whatever you really feel like you're missing, add more of. Your paper's only going to take so much marker. I'm going to go in with my yellow now, and then we'll see where we're at and what we need to add still. And as I fill this in, I will just kind of take a look and see what else I need to do. Because I do want it very compact. I want it pretty solid. I'm not going to let a lot of white spots show when I'm done. So you can see there's still quite a bit of white showing, so I'll be continuing to add. I want to make sure I get a good amount of yellow in there. I want to get right up under that apple because that's where that shadow will be the darkest. Right up under there. Still got some room. I'm going to add a little bit more red. Let's see if we can really darken that up. right. Okay. We're going to pause here and I'll see you again in a second. All right, so here's my apple. And you can see that blue and yellow really mixing together to make green. And you can really see where the red, yellow, and blue came together to form that brown. So in this video, I just want to remind you of a couple things we talked about. I showed you a couple pictures by the artist Seurat, and I would encourage you to take a look at some more of his artwork. It's pretty amazing. And we talked about using pointillism, which is using and applying dots to fill things in and using different colors of dots so that the eye blends them to make them into other colors. So for this, you can use two primary colors to make a secondary. Red and blue making purple, yellow and red making orange, and yellow and blue making green. And you can also mix the three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, together to make, as we say, mud, brown. So those color combinations work really well. So if you're just starting out and you're a beginner, you might want to just draw the apple and color it in. Some of my kiddos in grades 3 and up, you can feel free to apply the pointillism. I know you guys can more than handle that. And it's really just a matter of what you're comfortable with. If you want to take it a step further, you can begin applying the value by adding some areas with more dots and some areas with less dots, like we did around the edges, to kind of create that three-dimensional look in the drawing. So just kind of play around with it and experiment. You can use pointillism on just about anything that you can think of to draw. Another cool thing that you can do is grab your coloring books. I know several of you have those really cool coloring books that are out now and are so popular. And you can actually use pointillism to color those in, which is pretty cool. And sometimes that's very relaxing and they can be beautiful when you're finished. I even like to use Sharpies on those with little the little fine tip dots, because they really get in those little tiny areas. Some of those coloring books have really small little fine details, so I find that sometimes a Sharpie or a fine tip marker works really well. Also, if you have Sharpie, even for pointillism, I think I like it a little bit better than the Crayola. Now, it doesn't create quite as big of a dot, but it doesn't smear on your hand as much. However, the Crayola, being a washable marker, will kind of blend together for you a little bit, and it's a little more forgiving in that way. So these are just some things for you to play around with. Go ahead and remember to subscribe to my channel. I'm going to have some more videos coming up for you real soon. So until then, just remember, there's nothing in this world that you'll ever be that's more important than being a kind person. I love you. Have a great day.